In the heart of a tranquil English countryside, a routine excavation unearthed something far from ordinary, a discovery that would send ripples through the world of archaeology. What began as a simple dig soon revealed the ancient silent remains of warriors who lived and died in a time of brutal conflict. An Anglo-Saxon war cemetery, hidden for over 1,000 years, emerged from the earth, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. What tales do these graves tell? And why were these warriors buried here in this forgotten corner of history? Stay with us as we delve deep into this mysterious discovery and unravel the secrets of the past. The dig began like any other, with careful planning and a sense of anticipation in the air. The site, located on what was once a Bronze Age burial ground, had already given up a few secrets from the distant past. Archaeologists had found remnants of ancient pottery and scattered bones, but nothing prepared them for what they were about to uncover. As the first layers of soil were carefully removed, the team noticed something unusual: a dense, compacted area that hinted at human activity. With every cautious sweep of the trowel, the earth began to reveal its hidden treasure. First, a fragment of a shield boss appeared, rusty yet unmistakable. The discovery sent a thrill through the team. This was not just any sight. It was something much more significant. The shield boss, a rounded piece of metal that once protected a warrior's hand, was just the beginning. As the excavation continued, more artifacts began to surface: spearheads, the remains of shields, and eventually, the bones of the warriors themselves. The skeletal remains were remarkably well preserved, lying in rows, as if still standing in formation after centuries of slumber. The site was vast, stretching across the landscape in a way that suggested it was a place of great importance. Each grave was meticulously excavated, revealing the remains of men who had lived and fought in a time when survival was a daily struggle. The graves, marked by simple stones, held more than just bones. They held the story of a battle, of warriors who had once fought for land, for power, for survival. The discovery of this Anglo-Saxon war cemetery was nothing short of extraordinary. It was a site that had been lost to time, hidden beneath the layers of history, waiting for the right moment to be rediscovered. But what was this place? And why had these warriors been buried here, on the site of an ancient Bronze Age burial ground? As the days turned into weeks, the true scale of the cemetery became apparent. The team had uncovered dozens of graves, each containing the remains of Anglo-Saxon warriors. These were not just any men, they were fighters, buried with the weapons they once wielded in battle. Each grave told its own story. The skeletons were laid out with care, their arms crossed over their chests or at their sides, their heads pointed toward the rising sun. Beside them, the remnants of their weapons, a spear here, a shield there, spoke of the battles they had fought, the lives they had led. One grave in particular drew the attention of the archaeologists. It was larger than the others, deeper, and the bones within were accompanied by something rare: a sword. Swords were a symbol of great status in the Anglo-Saxon world, often owned by only the wealthiest and most powerful warriors. The presence of this sword suggested that the man buried here was of significant importance. The sword itself was a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Despite the passage of time, it remained in remarkable condition. Its blade still sharp, its hilt adorned with intricate designs. The sword was pattern welded, a technique that involved twisting and folding metal to create a strong and flexible blade. This was no ordinary weapon. It was a tool of war, a symbol of power, and possibly the key to understanding who this warrior was. The man buried with the sword was likely a leader, perhaps even a chieftain. His grave, positioned at the center of the cemetery, was a clear indication of his status. The other warriors, buried with simpler weapons, surrounded him, as if in death they continued to serve and protect their leader. The discovery of the sword was a moment of triumph, but it also raised questions. Who was this man? Why was he buried here, in this ancient cemetery? And what had brought him and his warriors to this place? The answers were not immediately clear, but the clues left behind by the dead began to paint a picture of a society on the brink of war. As the archaeologists continued to uncover more of the cemetery, a distinct and intriguing pattern began to emerge from the earth. The warriors' graves were not randomly placed. Instead, they seemed to follow a deliberate and organized plan, hinting at a deeper significance behind this ancient site. The graves were arranged in clusters, with the most elaborate burials positioned at the center of the cemetery. These central graves were marked by richer grave goods, such as weapons and shields, indicating that the individuals buried here were of higher status. Surrounding these central graves were simpler burials, likely belonging to the common warriors. This hierarchical arrangement was consistent with other known Anglo-Saxon burial sites, where individuals of higher status were buried in more prominent positions. However, the sheer number of graves and the uniformity in their placement suggested something more: a battlefield. The layout hinted at a place where these men might have fought and died together. The idea that this cemetery could be the final resting place for a group of warriors who perished in a significant battle began to take shape. As the excavation continued, more and more graves were uncovered, each revealing similar patterns. The graves were tightly packed, and many of the skeletons were found with weapons like spears and shields, which indicated that they were warriors. Some graves even contained personal items, such as knives, adding to the evidence that these were seasoned fighters. One particularly interesting theory proposed by the archaeologists involved the positioning of the graves. The central burials, with their richer goods, could have belonged to the most important warriors, possibly leaders or high-ranking officials. The graves surrounding them, arranged in a protective formation, might have been those of common soldiers who fought alongside their leaders. Their arrangement suggested that these men had died together, perhaps in a final desperate battle. The archaeological team speculated that this cemetery might represent the aftermath of a large conflict. The warriors were buried with care, their weapons laid out beside them, as if to prepare them for another battle in the afterlife. The uniformity of the graves, combined with the presence of so many weapons, pointed to a group of men who had fought and died together, their final resting place a testament to their unity in life and death. But the questions remained. Who were these warriors fighting? What was this battle that led to so many deaths? The site itself offered few concrete answers, but the clues left behind in the graves began to tell a story. The presence of so many weapons, along with the careful burial of the dead, suggested that this was a battle of significant importance, one that had warranted the establishment of a dedicated cemetery. As the excavation neared its end, the focus shifted to the most intriguing find of all: the sword buried alongside of one of the warriors. This sword, so carefully placed in the grave, was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of the warrior's status and skill. The process of excavating the sword was delicate and painstaking. The soil around it was carefully removed, inch by inch, until the full length of the blade was revealed. The sword was still intact, its metal gleaming in the sunlight after centuries of darkness. The team knew they had found something special. Swords from this period were rare, and the condition of this one suggested that it had been well cared for, possibly passed down through generations before being buried with its final owner. The pattern welding on the blade was intricate and beautiful, a testament to the skill of the blacksmith who had forged it. But what made this sword truly remarkable was the way it was positioned in the grave. It was placed alongside the warrior's body, with the hilt near his hand, as if he was ready to draw it in battle even in death. The symbolism was clear. This was a man who had lived and died by the sword, a warrior whose life had been defined by conflict. The discovery of the sword added a new layer of intrigue to the site. Who was this warrior, and what battles had he fought? The presence of the sword suggested that he was not just any soldier, but a leader, someone who had commanded respect and fear on the battlefield. His burial in the center of the cemetery, surrounded by his comrades, indicated that he had held a position of power, possibly even a king or a chieftain. The sword was carefully lifted from the grave and taken to the lab for further analysis. The team hoped that by studying the metal and the design, they might uncover more about its origins and the man who wielded it. But even without that knowledge, the sword told a story of its own. A story of battle, of honor, and of a warrior who had earned his place in history. As the last of the graves were excavated, the full extent of the cemetery became clear. This was not just a burial site, it was a memorial to a group of warriors who had lived and died in a time of great upheaval. The graves, the weapons, and the artifacts all pointed to a society that valued strength, honor, and loyalty above all else. But perhaps the most important aspect of this discovery was the sense of connection it provided. The warriors buried here were not just names in a history book. They were real people with real lives who had fought and died for what they believed in. Their graves, carefully preserved and honored, served as a reminder of the sacrifices they made and the legacy they left behind. If you found this exploration of history as fascinating as we did, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss out on more incredible stories from the past. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.